The penultimate episode of Ted Lasso has just been released, and what a fantastic episode it was. When I initially saw the runtime, I was slightly concerned over the fact that they might have been cramming a lot into it and brushing over a lot too, especially considering that it was about 20 minutes longer than a normal episode. However, this emotional whirlwind of a ride most certainly didn't disappoint. It even had a hilariously brilliant cameo from a legend in it too. Focusing on togetherness, forgiveness, and the idea of speaking rather than keeping things bottled up, this is most definitely an episode to remember. So with that, let's recap, break down, and explain all that there was to take away from this episode. So let's get into it. Here is Ted Lasso Season 3 Episode 11, Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. This episode saw AFC Richmond take on Manchester City for the second to last game of the season. Richmond had been on a 15-game winning streak and were 4 points off of the top of the league. We saw them go on to beat Manchester City in the game, giving them 3 points, which ultimately meant that they were now 1 point behind, which means Richmond now have the chance of winning the league in the final game of the season, something which we could well see happen. Togetherness, forgiveness, fighting, and being open was at the core of this episode, and it was something that was ingrained throughout every single one of the characters and their arcs. Whether it being Jamie and the feelings that he had towards his father as they were clouding his mind upon his first return back to Manchester since leaving, Roy opening up to Keeley about how he truly felt, Coach Beard forgiving Nate, Bex going to Rebecca and speaking about Rupert, and also Ted confronting his mother for the way that she bottled things up once his father died, something which he holds as a reason as to why he is the way that he is in the present day. As well, the idea that his son Henry might eventually leave him and the pain that it would cause. Things that I will get into during each character breakdown. So let's start with Ted. After 2 episodes where we hadn't really had much Ted, this episode gave us everything that we needed. I'll start with the final scene that he was in and the big thing that he wants to tell Rebecca. I feel Ted is going to tell Rebecca that he's going to be leaving at the end of the season, which is in 1 game's time. We saw a climax of Ted's arc in this episode where he broke down in front of his mother, and he told her that he essentially blamed her for bottling things up, not seeking professional help and glossing over the cracks when his father died. This was because it was what ultimately messed him up in a way. May was actually the person who made Ted realize that when she said to him, "Parents mess you up and add in extras." So that scene was a real poignant moment for Ted as he was confronting the source of the issue. Ted's mother was in Richmond and we didn't have a solid reason as to why she was there, but it was during this breakdown that she revealed to Ted that Henry missed him. This was such a powerful scene, and Jason Sudeikis did a phenomenal job at delivering the emotion that was needed for it to land. It was heartbreaking seeing Ted stood there and hearing those words, knowing that he was responsible for making his son feel that way. However, Ted was fearful of Henry growing up and leaving him one day, just like how his father left him. Ted has a lot of love to give, and the sudden death of his father was something that impacted him even later on in life with the fear of losing people. So with Ted finding out that Henry misses him and knowing what he needs to do, I think he's going to be saying to Rebecca that he's going to be leaving the club at the end of the season, tying back to a line earlier on in the episode where it was said how Ted was always running around and making sure everybody else was okay, without saving a drop for himself. This is now Ted giving himself that drop. During the final scene, there was a song being played with the lyrics, "It's better to have fought and lost than never fought at all." I think this is symbolic to the fight that Ted has been doing throughout the entirety of the show, and up until then he had been losing, but at least he was fighting. However now, I feel he's on the cusp of winning. Ted leaving is something which has been on the cards for a while, but it's still extremely impactful now seeing it about to be revealed. Jamie had the second largest involvement in this episode, and it was great to see him carry a heavy load and deliver an extremely strong performance. Jamie was fearful over going back to Manchester following the frosty departure when he left, plus he also had the weight of his father's opinion of him on his shoulders too. He never forgave him, but we saw that it was something that was needed for him to be able to perform well. Jamie returning to his childhood home and being around his mother was something that he needed too. Just being able to speak to somebody to get all of his feelings out, something which was at the core of this episode. With AFC Richmond being 1-0 up, Jamie ended up getting injured, and it was once Ted spoke to him and told him that forgiveness is sometimes the best thing that you can do for yourself rather than the other person. He went on to ultimately score the winning goal of the game, securing the win, showing that Roy's training had paid off. and that he was drastically different to the person that he once was. No longer was he solely just the goal scorer, but now he provided the assists too, showing that he's now a real team player. Having Roy and Keeley help him also marked a representation of growth. The former lover and also former enemy side by side in helping somebody that they now both cared about and were on the same side of. Jamie's growth and development in this show has been fantastic, arguably one of the best. Nate. I would say that Nate's arc has felt a little rushed in the past couple of episodes. That's the only thing I think is a little bit of a shame. He went from being West Ham manager to being a waiter at a restaurant in the space of 2 episodes without much explanation. Plus, we also saw that the Richmond boys wanted him back at the club, which did surprise me because it felt a little out of the blue, especially considering that the last time that they saw him they were giving him evils and didn't look like they wanted anything to do with him. Ordinarily, I feel we'd see Ted giving a speech about forgiveness, which could alter the mind of the team, but we didn't get that. Anyway, Nate was reluctant to go back to the club following finding out Ted wasn't officially saying that he wanted him there. However, he just didn't know of it at the time. It was Coach Beard that had the grudge, and it was only once Ted showed him the video of Nate ripping up the sign and being forced to be under a table for 5 hours that he realized that forgiveness was the right thing to do, especially considering that we saw how Ted forgave Beard all of those years ago and essentially gave him the life that he had now. Nate still had a deep love for the club and was preparing to apologize to Ted, albeit 60 pages. I wish it was Ted that was at Nate's door, but with it being Beard, it still made an emotional moment. We saw Nate take the job at AFC Richmond, and I feel with Ted most likely dropping the news that he's going to be leaving, it set up Nate Shelley becoming the manager in such a clear and seamless way. Nate is technically due to arrive 30 minutes after the final scene in this episode, so it's going to be interesting. Roy and Keeley. Roy and Keeley's involvement in this week's episode was mainly focused around assisting Jamie in becoming better and getting over his troubles that were on his mind, which they did successfully do. We did see that Roy admitted that he wanted to be more than friends with Keeley. However, although we didn't get to hear her response as it was cut off, it sounded as though she may not actually want to be with him. I hope that isn't the case, because I do want them to be together, as they work so well and do have true feelings there. But I guess that will be something that gets answered in the season finale. We also saw Roy whisper something to Jamie as he came off the pitch, something that we didn't get to hear. Maybe it was just him saying well done, but I feel it could have some importance due to there being a lot of focus on it. Rebecca. Rebecca was mainly a supporting character in this week's episode. The main thing for her came at the end, where we saw that Bex and Rupert's previous assistant turned up at her doorstep and were looking for advice, most likely because they found out about Rupert fooling around, so it's her time to help them out. There was a moment when the team were watching the movie in Manchester, and the lyrics "I wanted it to be you" were being played, and Sam and Rebecca looked over at each other. There was also an awkward encounter between the both of them during last week's episode, so could they be setting something up between the both of them for the season finale? I hope not. I feel Rebecca has moved on since then. Overall review. I thought this was a great episode of the show. As penultimate episodes go, it did everything so well to set up the season finale. It was an extremely emotional episode that really allowed you to feel what the characters were going through. I thought it was great that they managed to get Pep Guardiola to appear in the episode and actually have some lines too. I'm gutted that the show is coming to an end because there's quite literally no other show out there that's like it. It will definitely be missed, but for now, onwards to the season finale, and hopefully AFC Richmond can stop Man City from winning the treble. So, there you have it, Ted Lasso Season 3 Episode 11, Ending Explained. If you want to see more videos such as Endings Explained, theories and predictions, and character breakdowns, then click on the I button, or alternatively you can head over to my channel where you'll find them all. If you'd like to give me a show or movie that you'd like me to review, then head over to my Twitter, @brainpilot_, and tweet me what show or movie you'd like me to review next. And finally, if you'd like to see what I rate the latest movies that don't quite make the cut to getting a dedicated video, then head over to my Letterboxd profile. It's where I rate the latest releases in real time. What did you think of this episode? Leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.